Can I tell you? We're going to return to that in a little bit. I want to talk about the 70 feature films that you've worked on. But I really want to know what drew you to this independent film, which is really what we're talking about, the independent labor of love. But we'll come back to you. Let me get to everybody first. Armando and Shirley are husband and wife. Armando is the co-writer, the co-producer, the star of it. Shirley obviously plays the woman upstairs, if you've seen the film. So we have a sense of how you may have gone to it, but mainly, Shirley, can I hear how you met up with Jason first time and how you made that connection to the
Jason was really through, I mean, it was through Armando. So they have this beautiful brotherhood, brothers from another mother, and Jason's family. So that's how, you know, I was introduced to Jason, and the film itself was, you know, I was eventually going to get a role.
You had an in. You were sleeping with the star. Is that what you're saying? Right. I don't want to hear about that.
The producer. I know. But yeah. So, but it was so we have a daughter. So it was, we had to juggle. So it couldn't be a part that was too, because someone had to take care of Valentino while he, you know, was knee deep shooting. But it was I was very excited about the role that I got. I was cast in, which is really fantastic. And Tony, to you, I can't tell you, I don't know if you know this, but when you and Armando were first got to work together on Royal Pains, Armando was beside himself because he got his hero. He was like, oh my gosh, he plays like we're family on this show. So for him, it was huge. And also the friendship that you guys developed working on Kiara's play was very important to him, because very much something that is very hard to find is to find another Latino mentor in this business that's been through it. And so it meant a lot to him. It means a lot to him, your friendship. So he's able to come back to you and how did you do this and how did you navigate that and how did you figure all of this out, and have a family and, you know, all that.
It's just so fantastic that we actually see three, I won't quite say generations because it's not quite that, but three layers of Latin work in the city, working on films. Let's get to Moises. How did you get into it? I mean, you're the younger one. You're not a
yeah.
How did you come in?
So a buddy of mine, he sent me a text message saying that he couldn't make it to a reading. Like, I swear to God.
That's true.
He sends me a text message and he's like, hey, Mo, mind you, like me and him, we worked together in the past. So we have like a really cool relationship. So he's like, hey, Mo, like, I can't make it to this reading. Can you sub for me? And it's like during the time where everything shuts down, like December-ish. So like, I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I love like going to readings and meeting different people. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Just, you know, tell Armando I'm down. So Armando sends me an email. I read the script and I was like, whoa, this is really good. And I email Armando. I'm like, hey, do you like, can I play, or do you want me to like be, you know, do you want me to stay in a lane, or can I just like go out? And he's like, man, just do what you want to do. And I'm like, oh, this is amazing. And the next day we go to, I think the reading was at Gersh.
Yeah.
And
Ray actually read Father Rubin in that reading, because I think we were trying to, it was like Tony was out of town or something, and something happened, and so Ray was bitter.
Still bitter.
Ray was supposed to read like 5 roles in that reading, and he ended up reading 6. So
funny. Yeah. So I go to the reading and I meet you know, once I read the script, I'm like, this is not a reading. This is an audition for me. Like, I didn't treat it like a reading. Like, this is not casual. I really want to be in this. So I treated it like an audition. And after the reading, you know, I emailed Jason a couple of times, like, hey man, don't forget about me. And you know, and like the rest is history. We made it happen. So yeah, it was a different.
Yeah. That reading was in December of 2017. So when we're looking at the timeline, it's about a 2.5 year time from that reading at Gersh until, I think it was December, from the reading at Gersh until the premiere this last Friday. It gives you, and I think that is unbelievably fast. unbelievably fast. But it does tell you that you have to have a long lead time, and you have to really trust yourself, you trust your work, and also have a good structure to lay out and a great story to talk about. I want to do a little thing about the origins of the story. Jason, when did the first idea come up? If we did that reading in December of 2017, when did it come up, and how did you arrange for Hurricane Maria to be part of your story?
It's Hurricane on demand. Well, Armando, in the summer of 2017, Armando sent me a little, like one of those like smart dumb web videos on the Roman Stoic Seneca, the philosopher. And for some reason he was like, I think there's something here. And I was like, I like this. I think it's cool. And then we started talking about what it would be. And, you know, it's interesting. The first image that I wrote was the air mattress blowing up. And I based that on, because what's sort of sparked the idea is Seneca, the philosopher, was a very wealthy man and a very famous man, but he lived very simply at night to remind himself of what he could lose. So he lived in a really, really simple house and slept on a bed of straw, even though he had enough money to do otherwise. And there was something about that image and translating that into, for some reason, I thought of an air mattress and a guy alone in his room or in his home. And then we just kind of built it out from there. And we did a lot of writing and developing, and we had the Father Reuben character. The Father Reuben character was originally in the Bronx, and is very much based on Armando's mentor, Father Golden. And then when the hurricane hit, that's when we just shifted everything. Many of the pieces were still there from the very beginning, but we shifted everything. We thought it really raised the stakes. Also for me, just, you know, watching Armando, who I love so much, go through that and grapple with it and try to, and Shirley and everybody trying to, you know, everybody who's Puerto Rican and hopefully everybody's human, trying to wrap their brain about what was going on. It certainly was for me. And watching him try to deal with that, I was like, we have to make this part of that movie, part of the movie. And then of course, Armando, in his wonderfully impatient nature, which were a good balance because I'm very patient and he's not. But this was actually, I think sometimes being impatient is good because he was like, we got to go down there. We got to go down there. We got to go down there. And I was like, okay, great. Like we have half the script, but okay. And he's like, we'll write the rest around it. Don't worry. And you know, so because he wanted to get all that second unit stuff right after the hurricane hit. Because he knew that the topsoil had been wiped off the island and it was not going to be green, but then it would be green. And that authenticity was really important, and obviously fully supported it. So we actually, before the reading that Moises was in, we had shot about 10 minutes of the movie. So it's very rare in a reading for a screenplay where you get to a moment where you're like, and now I'm going to press play on my MacBook. And we watched like 10 to 10 rough minutes that I cut together of what had been shot. And that was a lot.
What I remember from the reading is the slow motion shot of the Puerto Rican flag after seeing all of that destruction. And it brought me to tears.
I remember that reading how everyone was really just taken by the 10 minutes, you know, and I think it was October of 2017,
right?
Month after, where they went down to shoot the scenes. And originally there was going to be, you know, you guys were going to shoot in Puerto Rico anyway, but then the hurricane happened, and there was no way to not reference what was happening.
Right. Yeah. When I said that the Father Reuben character was in the Bronx, sorry, I should clarify. That was a very early draft, and then it sort of expanded, and then the hurricane really shifted things. And, you know, for that first trip down to Puerto Rico, I didn't go. I was like, Armando went with a shot list, and we were on the phone, and he was like showing me things. And it was really cool. And we didn't go back to Puerto Rico with Tony until the following year to shoot the big, you know, I guess we're trying to make this spoilers free in case people haven't seen the movie, but there's just a gargantuan scene towards the end of the movie between Tony and Armando that I'm still in awe of, having been in the room and watched those guys navigate their way through it, because they're both just like, every take is brilliant. But we went back again in June of the following year to shoot that.
So actually, that takes me on to Tony and to talk a little bit about working with.
See, you see what I did, Ray?
It's just like boom, boom, boom.
I'm the king of beat changes. Thank you.
Talk about working with the independent filmmakers, and also you have two major sections of this narrative revolving around your character, and they seem to be in such different worlds, and the father is in such a different place. What was the separation between the two filming segments? Were they 1 week then another, or what was the distance between shooting those sections?
There was no distance. We shot them all basically on the same, I think, what was it, Jason, 2 or 3 days?
It was 2 days. It was, yeah, we were there for 3 or 4, and we had a really great dinner, Tony. I love that dinner. That was really nice. But it was 2 days of shooting.
So how many, now you're working with an independent film. Can you tell me about your dressing room and your dressing trailer, about what the difference between working in an independent film and on a major feature? What were the perks you had?
Ray, I only have one. I have a question to your answer.
Yes.
Or to your answer to your a question to your question. What dressing room? That's what happens when you work with friends.
Oh, so they're taking advantage of you. Is that what you're saying?
But listen, I'm just being facetious, but he put me up in this beautiful little kind of boutique hotel on the beach in San Juan. So it was great. I got a chance to go out in the morning before breakfast and take a swim in El Caribe and have a Puerto Rican breakfast and then go to work. It was, look, I mentioned earlier that it was a emotional bribery. It was not. I work with him on anything really because he's so talented, but I was very impressed and touched, moved by the script. A couple things. One, the reason I'm an actor is because I had a Jesuit scholastic who took interest in me and basically mentored me, saw something in me, and had me join the speech team and debate team and encouraged me to do theater in high school. Oh. So that I said, okay, I connect to that. I'd love to be the mentor to Armando that someone was to me. So that was a very personal connection. And the other, I left Cuba when I was 8 years old in the 3rd grade. And I have this kind of deep connection with Cuba, and at the same time, a very deep separation from it. A pull and a push away from it for so many reasons. And so the tension in the script of that controversy of being an American, wanting American dreams, and yet those dreams are rooted in Puerto Rico, as mine were rooted in Cuba. Look, my first acting, experience was in Cuba as a 2nd grader reciting Jose Marti poetry in front of 1,000 people at a high school graduation. Wow. So, those dreams were born there. The seed was planted there, but it was cultivated, through my Jesuit education, and then, in a sense, inspired by the American dream, the American experience. So in so many ways, I connected with this script, and then so wanted to be a part of it. And that scene that Jason was referring to at the end is one of the most difficult scenes I've ever done as an actor.
It is stunning. Watching it again today for the second time in a week. I was so scared when it was over because it was kind of like one of the things we get so lost in something. I mean, I'm sure Shirley and Moises can tell you that sometimes when you drop into something, you just kind of forget yourself, and you're so immersed in the experience that you don't really know what happened. I actually want to take it back. You said that you were drawn to the script because as I, of course, doing my homework, rereading the script today, what I was really delighted by was the fact that there seemed to be, because it was so tightly written, there seemed to be very little need for improvisation for the most part. Like I was reading, and there are a couple things like Moises. There was a section at the the Queen's Museum in front of the Unisphere, right? And as I was reading that, I said, my God, it's verbatim what they wrote. The actions are verbatim, which is a testament to the specificity of Jason and Armando's vision. Again, to young actors out there who are looking at this, one of the things that you'll find in the specific is the universal, and you've got to be specific to who you are. I love the fact, Tony, that you were had a Jesuit education, that there was that connection. I don't know if Armando knew that beforehand, but that's
I think he did. I mean, because we've talked about it, and you know, I feel I'm a mentor to Armando, like Shirley said. I feel very honored and privileged to be asked. He asked me to be. He just came out and, you know, asked me, and you know, I couldn't say no. You know, there's so much there going on. There's many talents, many people inside of Armando, and it's fascinating to be a mentor to someone like that.
I want to go back to the script a little bit. Moises, when I said about not having a room for improvisation, as I was looking through the script and seeing how specific, don't let Jason know this, did you feel like you had chances to improve his script, to change things? Was there any room for in your work, because it feels so fresh and alive and flowing? How much latitude did the director give you?
I think he kind of gave me freedom to like a take or two, just to feel whatever natural. But
I'm not the bad guy here. Like,
I think in all honesty, I think the biggest thing I was scared of is Armando and I's relationship, right? Because the first time I've ever met him in my life, we're at the reading, and the second time I've ever met him, we're shooting day 1 or day 3 or whatever it is. Oh. So I wanted that relationship to feel as natural as possible. And once I met Armando on set, and I felt how open and how warm he is as a human, then I knew as an actor he was going to give me all he had. So I didn't really even need to go improv, because it just felt so real and so natural on set. So that was like the biggest thing. But Jason, to his credit, he kind of gave me a take or two just to feel whatever's natural. And sometimes it worked. Sometimes he'll be like, nah, that's not it. Do it again. That's not it. Let's go back to the script, which is great, because like I didn't feel like I was in a cage, because I hate feeling like that. And especially for Armando and like that relationship that we have, like it had to feel as natural and as fresh as possible. So credit to Jason Armando for writing something like that.
Yeah, Ray, if you don't mind, I just could add, just because we have so many like, you know, early career actors, students that are just that are watching and probably will be watching the recording at some point. You know, I think it's you know, directing is not about being right all the time. Directing is not being sure you're right while you're shooting. That's the dumbest way to approach this. It's about environment and about setting up a great act. I have great actors. Set them up to succeed. Let them play a little bit. Yeah, I think it's this, but I also, you know, I am also someone who's dumb enough to edit their own movie, right? So the editor part of me on set is always going, I need options. Like I don't care if the director thinks they're right. So trying to let them play and let it breathe. And, you know, I mean, Tony, I think the first, I mean, if I remember correctly, I think the first master of your big scene with Armando was 12.5 minutes long, you know? And when that came in and I saw like my sort of little stopwatch, I was like, okay. So, but letting it breathe like that is what allowed them to explore it and make it so beautiful, and giving options. And you can compress easily. Tony directs too. He knows this very well. It's, you know, you can compress something a lot easier than you can let it breathe. So let the actors breathe. Sorry, I'll shut up now.
By the way, Jason, I still haven't recovered from those 12.5 minutes. Who writes a 12.5 minute scene?
My husband and Jason.
Woody Allen, maybe. You know.
Well, this is the problem of being reformed theater people. I think we you know, we're still thinking in larger pieces, and, you know, and letting people talk.
Interesting. Yeah, it's probably true.
Hey, Jason, that 12.5 minutes, what did it end up being? Any idea in the end?
7.5. Maybe,
7.5.
you know, and there were versions of it that were 10, and there were versions of it that were 6 probably. And you know, but just trying to find that balance, you know what I mean? We could let that scene go for 15 minutes probably in the edit if I needed to, but it was,
you know, what's interesting too is that the scene being that long allows you to explore different components of the situation, of what's going on, different aspects of where the relationship is, and the function of that relationship in the story.
That's right.
So if anything, once we did the longer version, as we, compressed it, which I think was right. It played better dramatically shorter. It was informed by what we had found in the longer version.
Absolutely. And I would even say, Tony, that allowing that to breathe for you guys is sort of a part of the process of just getting to what's going to work the best. It's not only about having that as a product, but I think it helps the process because it becomes a de facto rehearsal and exploration. And I think that's something that all of us as theater people really value, that I think sometimes you walk on a film set and they're like, just give me the answer, give me the product, right? And I think allowing for that makes a big difference.
Well, it's fantastic. Tony said it's informed by it. And one of the things that, let me throw it back to the old, the real first generation of actors from the group theater, their whole idea was to get an ensemble that worked on a unified theme, which is back to that whole idea of the collective experience of everyone. Pulling for the same idea. I love that idea of having that connection and being informed by the work that you do. Speaking of being informed by the work you do, surely the relationship between you and Armando is so delicious and fun and funny and sexy and chaste all at the same time. In rewatching it today, what I was really unbelievably hyper aware of, and it may be the COVID times, the power of a touch. In the scene in the backyard, how that has so much resonance. And I don't know if that is just us now. I suspect not, because I remember it so powerfully the first time I saw it. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like working with the diva who is the co-writer, co-producer? With your husband.
I mean, a couple of things to your point, Jason, talking about like letting actors breathe, and also Ray about the collective and coming together. One of the great things about this project is that Armando and Jason were able to call from this wonderful just source of great New York actors that know each other.
Yeah.
So it's this feeling of like your repertory. So there's a shorthand, there's a respect for everyone's work. And I came in to just shoot scenes with Armando, but then what was wonderful is to see then friends and other scenes, and then that energy just flows beautifully from scene to scene to scene, and it's this collective sort of just shorthand that we've all worked with each other. It kind of felt like, like after a couple of years of working on a couple of plays and having worked in different projects, and here we are playing other characters, but that comfort level is there. And working with my husband, I mean, he's also my reader for all my own tapes, which is really handy. we have quite the shorthand, and to your point about letting it breathe with actors, Jason, and I know this by now, but I'm always reminded of it, how important it is as an actor to come having done your work, having gotten in there and explored, and to go in and not come in from a position of lack of like, oh, director, tell me. It's more of like, hey, what about this? Or let's try that, kind of feeling out if you have a director as wonderful as Jason who can give you this space to play, to then bring all this work that you worked on, because there's so many technical things going on.
Right.
What do we have? We had like a marching band in our
Oh, gee, that was
marching band. Turns out our location is next door to a school marching band.
Everything that could go wrong in New York while shooting this movie did go wrong. It was just one of those.
And that patio scene, someone was breaking into their apartment.
Oh, right.
To break their window.
Right.
Got locked out.
I forgot about that. We were like, oh, there's a crime happening next door. Maybe we should do something.
That brings me to something I want to talk to Jason about, the hazards of filming in New York City. How long did it take you to get the permit to film in the subway, Jason?
It's 0 seconds. It was called, let's run into the subway and do this.
That's amazing.
Real filmmaking.
I want to talk a little bit about the fact that it's a bilingual film. and it's decidedly bilingual. And I watched it the first time we watched it when it played on HBO, the Latin channel. They had no English subtitles. We asked for no English subtitles, and it was so wonderful. Again, Tony, that's why I just got to say how moving you were to me, even though I don't understand a word of it. Speaking of understanding a word of it, Jason, how is it directing people whose maybe perhaps Spanish isn't your first language?
It's definitely not my first language. I speak Seneca Spanish by now, and I mean, I can read Spanish and I can understand it. I can't keep up in comprehending when Tony and Armando start like really going. We're like, I'm like every third word, fourth word, got it. But I mean, when you know the script, look, I mean, it's, to me, I look at it as more of an honor and a privilege than a problem. That I'm being included in this in a way, and that I think we're trying to tell a really universal story in a very specific way. And that was, I think, the balance between Armando and I and how we were trying to do that was a big part of it. I would also say, I mean, look, it's the editor in me too. It might sound insane, but when I'm editing, I edit with the sound off half the time, because I learned early on in cutting things that if a scene makes sense when you can only see it, it's going to be amazing when you can hear it. Mm. And I think Shirley and Armando, Moises, Tony, that big scene towards the end between Tony and Armando, like, I watch the cut and I'm like, I get it. If you get it without sound, because it's a visual medium, imagine how good it is when, these people who really know how to connect the language and the sound and the atmosphere and the score. We've got some really great music, different types of music throughout the story, which is really cool. I think that's a big part of it. So it was a challenge, but I'm an asshole who likes challenges. So, Armando and I are hoping our next one is going to be in 3 languages.
Yes.
I'm only half kidding.
Moises, I got to say that one of the things I really appreciate is the expressive quality of your hair, which is a character in and of itself. And as somebody who is losing his, and
come on.
I'm sorry, Jason, I had to bring it up. We are deeply jealous, and I hope to never see you ever again, because it's a wonderful, wonderful way of expressing the character. I do want to say one more thing about the Queens Museum scene. There is, and it has to do with the idea that this is a bilingual film that is intensely human. And I think that comes through in that scene when you are talking about being a young actor who's cast and that you're not a gangbanger, you're not a drug dealer.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that, because watching it again and being moved by it again, it really feels to me that there's not a lot of acting going on there. It feels like it's true to you.
And it comes from a real place. So once I read the script, I knew that was going to be a fun moment to do, because I wanted to get that off my chest, because especially now I think things are possibly changing a little bit more, which is encouraging. But I mean, when you're coming up, you're just happy to work, right? You're just thug number one. You'll do it, right? It's just, you just want to work. But after a certain time, you start to realize that, no, I want to be a part of like stuff that I'm proud of and that the next generation can actually do. And, you just want to be proud of the work that you do. And me being this or that is not where I want to do. It's not what I want to do. So once I read that part, especially that scene, I knew that was going to be just a fun moment for me to really just not even act, for me just to talk to Armando at that point. So, yeah.
Hey, Tony, because you have the longest arc of your career, how have things changed for you as you've seen since you started acting? I mean, the medium's changed quite a bit, but for you personally, what has been one of the gratifying things that you've noticed in terms of change, or maybe not gratifying?
Well, I wear a coat and tie more than I used to.
And that is fantastic. And explain that. I think I know that. I just want everybody to understand exactly what you mean by that.
Well, look, I was in Moises and Shirley's and Armando's place. I mean, that's another thing that resonated deeply with me about this movie, is the struggle of the Latino actor. And especially someone like Armando that doesn't look stereotypically Latino. Mm-hmm. So that's a quandary. My friend Andy Garcia couldn't get arrested as a Latino because they kept telling him, you don't look Latino. you know. So his first job was as an Italian, you know, in the Untouchables. So, you know, I mean, this struggle has been going on. I've been working for 45 years, since 1975, you know. So to me, it has changed, like Moises says, but incrementally.
Mm.
And I emphasize the incremental nature of it. So we're already 17, 18% of the population. We're still represented at maybe 4 or 5% on television, even less in movies. We don't really exist in movies. Major studio movies, oh, there's a handful of us, and we really don't have any real American movie stars that are Latinos. You know, so it's interesting. You know, you have to be in movies that are studio movies to become a movie star. You know, and we just haven't been able to penetrate that world.
He's of a different generation, but I'm always talking to my students about the importance of looking at somebody like Jose Ferrer, who in the middle of the century, last century, was the most prominent American Shakespeare actor. And those of you who have ever seen Cyrano de Bergerac, the film of it, you see just how skilled he was. And I was always sorry that it seemed to drop off, because there seemed to be an opening. Maybe Raul Julia came out a little bit to be another mountain that was attained. But again, when you say it's only 4 to 5% of the film populating in film,
4% in television.
In television, that is
in movies were less.
Wow.
So that's another reason why I'm so passionate about working with young Latino writers, filmmakers, actors, because we need to build our own, tell our own stories, build our own repertoire of material, and how else are you going to become a major filmmaker unless you make films? And so we need to come together with that and tell good stories, tell our stories. No one else is doing it.
I think the idea of picking. Sorry, Shirley, go ahead.
Sorry. That was so wonderful. When Armando wrote, Armando and Jason started to work together right on the script. Armando was doing season 1 of The Chi. And what was great is that he was like, okay, I am financially good. I have a job. Now I have now duty calls, in the sense of, you know, when you're a Latinx actor, it's you know, as actors, you're here to tell other people's stories, but when the stories are not varied enough, when they're not for Latinos, then there's a double duty. There's a tell stories of that others write, but also you have to tell your community stories, and your own stories. And Armando took that on as a duty, as a calling, as a must. And so I like to mention that also to younger actors, as like, you know, as you're getting your jobs and you're scoring, you know, putting away your money, also take that moment to create time for yourself to create your own work.
To tie that all in, you'll notice over Moises's shoulder, there are a bunch of index cards on the wall. And I was teasing him before that he was actually studying for, because to me, he looks so young, he's still studying for his science exam or his geography exam. But it turns out exactly what it is it's an index card outline of ideas he has for writing a script. So Tony and Shirley just led you through the generations down to exactly what Moises is doing, which is using his pen to tell his stories that are specific to him, just as Armando and Jason told a story that was specific to the two of them. We could go on with this for hours and hours and hours, but I want to make sure that we invite some of the audience to ask questions. Now would be a time. Apparently, you can use the chat feature. It's not the chat feature. There's an actual question feature, which we can pop you up. Maybe Andres, you can come in and sort of let them know what they have to do to ask questions of these wonderful actors. Or not?
Right on cue. Perfect.
Great.
Andres. Oh, they're there.
Yes, for everyone, the attendees, if you guys have any questions, you can either write it in the chat for everyone. There is a feature to like raise your hand, if I'm not mistaken, so we can do that.
There is.
And we
That's
want
it.
to, if you guys are comfortable with that, to open your camera so that you can actually connect to the panelists, whoever you're asking the question to. So I guess we'll give a couple of seconds.
Great. Well, while they're learning how to type,
Ray,
or
I'm sure Ray has a lot more questions.
Oh my God, I have so many more things to ask. I want to ask Jason about one of my favorite characters, who appears 3 times, I think, in the film, and that's
Oh, he's
Gabriel,
so good.
who is the roommate
Yes.
in the second. And he
Right.
represents so much as I'm watching it, because we teach story structure, and Jason's been a real mentor to me about story structure. I was blown away how he is such an authentic, true human being, but also serves to express the theme of the story over and over and over again. He's a wonderful character, a wonderful actor whose name I forget.
Ricky.
Can you
Right.
Ricky, can you tell me a little bit about the conception of that? And then I actually have a question that's come up.
I think originally that scene was God, I don't know. There were a lot of versions of that scene, and I think originally it was purely visual, and we just had him in the room, and we didn't really explain the roommate right away. I think it was Armando's idea. I mean, again, we don't want to parse like Armando wrote this line, but I like to give credit. Like I remember vividly where he was like, "We need to have the other guy," and I was like, "Oh, I think it can be visual, but okay." And he was right. It was a great little bit, and I also think it's another good example of like I just love how the movie is populated with great performances from great New York actors, because I think New York actors are the best actors. I'm biased, obviously, but it's true. And having these little moments, these little opportunities. I mean, even like the guy's got like 6 lines in the movie, and people talk about it. And I think the ability to have these really interesting characters, and maybe some of whom you would be like, I would watch a movie about that guy. Like, I want to know what's going on in the other room. And really funny, effortless little moments. I mean, I think Ray, I mean, I always love to embarrass Ray, but I said in an interview the other day, Ray plays Egg Sandwich Guy, and he's I'm like brilliant. I mean, he showed up to shoot that, and Armando and I were like, "Whoa, Ray is in deep." Like, whoa. But at the same time, I'm like, Ray's been in 13 Broadway shows, and he's like showing up to say, "Buy me an egg sandwich," and I'm like, okay. I mean, that's how lucky we are in terms of the community that we're a part of and connected to. So I love giving like these little moments and letting them. To sound super nerdy, I think the movie is more Ovidian than Aristotelian. I think it's actually a little bit more of a, I'm sorry to sound like a teacher, but I mean, so this notion of like a number of episodes and instances adding up over time, rather than a traditional Aristotelian arc where you're expecting certain things to happen in certain moments. That said, it has Aristotelian structural points. Don't get me wrong, but I love the idea.
Will be tested immediately afterwards, so stick around.
Ray, you always pull this out of me. This is what you do to me. I'm sorry.
Okay, I will say there's one character we haven't talked about, actually 2 characters, and that's Manhattan and Queens. Your depiction of Queens and Puerto Rico, right. The location as character has never been more apparent. One of the things I love about Queens has never seemed more real and human and rich and diverse. Okay, let's get to these questions. JP says, any advice for new screenwriters to get your work seen?
Am I taking that one? You got to meet a bunch of actors. You got to have them read it and help you develop it and make it stronger and test it out and see where it's working and where it's not working. I also advise like all students nowadays, like take your smartphone, go shoot some stuff, shoot a scene, shoot a little piece, do a little extra, like a visual exercise, and just see where it leads. Because for me, the first 5 or 10 films that I made, in some way, or experiments that I did, or little bits of writing that I did, I would never show anyone. And there's a good reason for that. Like, nobody wants to see that shit. And then you start to figure it out. You start to wrap your brain around it. Don't everybody gets obsessed about the business end of things. And I'm not saying that's not important, because it is. But I think with community and building that and developing work and getting stronger in your writing, that stuff will slowly come, because it's going to come from a network of artists leading to the business.
Great. Tony
has.
So I don't know, you haven't mentioned it, Jason, but Armando did a short film in Puerto Rico.
That was us. Yeah, we did that.
Right. You guys did a short film in Puerto Rico before you did the long form, a feature.
Right.
Now, a couple things. One is you've got to practice the craft before you take on. You can't, you can't sing opera till you learn how to sing Happy Birthday. So, you're right. So I think it's important for you to think small and try to do it well, like you said, Jason, on a small scale, and learn how to tell a story.
Right.
And then the other component, I think, which is really important, is that from what I got from Armando, he wasn't ready to do a feature until he had the right story to tell. So because I tell you, I mean, how much time did you spend on this film? How have you spent on it in your life, of your life?
Of this feature?
Yes.
Over 3 years.
3 years. So you got to be so committed and so compelled to tell the story that you're willing to give up 3 years of your life to make it work.
That's right.
Some people spend longer. Mm-hmm. So those two things are important. Learn the craft and then really find the right story for you that can sustain a long form treatment or long form telling of it.
It's in the end, it's always about the story that you're having to tell, that you're needing to tell. If you want to see a film that was shot entirely on I believe an iPhone 8, Steven Soderbergh 2 years ago released High Flying Bird.
Right.
Yeah.
Is all shot on an iPhone, which probably you all have that.
And so is Tangerine.
Tangerine. That was an iPhone 6, I think, right?
Yeah. And Ray, just to quickly go back to I have time to say afterwards if people have questions. I don't want to take any more time with the actors if they have to go. But I was just going to say about the Manhattan Queens thing, and the distinction with Puerto Rico. I wanted directorially, I wanted the 3 acts to have very distinct personalities, right? And even more so, I wanted New York and Puerto Rico to have very distinct personalities in terms of how they were shot. So most of the New York stuff, the Upper West Side section and the Queens section is shot, the exteriors are shot on a very long lens, which is great creatively because it isolates the character. And that's something I wanted him to feel very isolated in the city. But practically it works very well because you can shoot from 2 blocks away and nobody knows you're shooting a movie, which in indie filmmaking is gold because you get a lot of free extras and free texture and free all sorts of New York energy. And in terms of Puerto Rico is the only part of the movie that has a lot of handheld, where it's shot a little bit more real, so to speak. So that was something that we wanted to really get in place until he lands in the room with Father Reuben, and then that sort of feel goes away because that we wanted it to be very still.
Okay,
sorry, I was trying to fill.
We have a couple of questions, which are, I think I would really love to get to the actors, but I'm going to, rather than get Jason to answer this, because I think the actors, I want to take advantage of them, that we have them here. Through AMCP, we'll always be able to contact
There's some really good questions here.
Yeah, talk about the culture that doesn't let men show deep vulnerability in front of one another. Ooh. Wow. And all the men immediately don't show deep. I like to talk about.
I have to say the home. I mean, I'm sorry to jump in and I don't want to monopolize. I want the actors to respond in their own way, but I think that's a big part of the movie. And I will tell you, it's a hallmark of all of my close male friendships. None more so than between me and Armando, is we actually do that. So don't believe the stereotypes. We are out there. We do exist. And I think a big part of the movie is letting down your guard. And for me, Shirley, which I can't tell you how many times I went back to line producer, was like, I don't care if Shirley's schedule doesn't work. She's doing this movie. Make it work, change it. Because I thought it was really important, because I think a big thing in the movie is if that guy will just start listening to the women in his life is going to improve very quickly.
Well, what's great about the film is that, which ties in, I think, with vulnerability in men, is that this idea of fame and the seductive nature of fame and fortune that we've all kind of, you know, been seduced by at some point or another. It's you know, the patriarchy. It's very clear. It's that party and that space that he goes to. He has something, you know, he has this nervous breakdown, and then as the film continues, you know, we go and we're in this, you know, Kitty City. We're in this space. When we meet my character, there's warmth, there's inclusion, there's openness, and it's female dominant. It's female dominant. It's now, you know, achieving your dreams and success is very different.
Right.
And I do this because for some reason the shape that comes into mind is round. It's, you know.
That's right.
There it is.
That's right.
But that theme is very strong, where you know, you can be vulnerable wherever you are.
And it's interesting because I had a good friend who said that she thought the movie above everything else was about toxic masculinity. And I was like, okay. I was like, it's definitely there. I'm not sure it's the central theme, but I'm like, I totally get that and respect that. I think that's great that was your takeaway.
Great. We had one question here. How did you find the energy to keep the momentum over the 3+ years? And you don't drink that much coffee.
I drink
so
a lot of coffee. This is why I look like this. I'm only 22. I you know, Armando. My answer is Armando, and my answer is Shirley, and my answer is Tony and Moises, and just like I felt, you know, my greatest fear in production of the movie was letting Armando down.
The partnership is having a partnership and being witness to that partnership is really fantastic because you're accountable to someone.
Right.
Yeah.
And what was great is that throughout those 3 years, they also created something of a schedule. They would check in on a daily basis. They were, you know, okay, next steps. And also, I can say for Armando, when things would get slow as an actor, which inevitably happens, this was the driving force to keep him going. So, okay, things are slowing down on the acting side. That's okay because I've got so much to do, and you're the CEO, president, you know, janitor, you do the everything. So you definitely are busy, and that was a big motivator. I think is for Armando being accountable to Jason, and also when there were these laps in the acting world that he was
which brings us back to the whole idea that I opened the thing on with today, which that this is a collective enterprise. It's a collective enterprise between actors, between actor and director, between writers, between the whole production crew. It's a miracle when it happens, and it's something wonderful happens.
You know, I wanted to add a little something to the question, or the answer to the question about man's vulnerability. My first reaction to that question was, I'm just going to take the fifth and not incriminate myself. But one of the things I love about this film, you know, Tolstoy said something about that men are defined by their work, you know, and I think what's interesting about this picture is that that was central to me in my experience of the movie, is that, you know, we all get dealt different cards, and they may not be the cards that we like or that we hoped for, but those are the cards we have. And so I think what's beautiful about this film is that he eventually grows up and evolves past this kind of egocentric, narcissistic obsession with being defined by some sort of, in some ways, adolescent, you know, ambition, and has difficulty adjusting to what life hands him. You know, and in a sense, you know, you got to make lemonade.
Yeah.
You know, and he does. He starts to accept the fact he's a good teacher, that he can be a good father, that he can be a good patriot, he can be all that he can also be a good actor and not have to be a big star. I mean, that's what's interesting to me, and I'll just finish it with how it applies to my career. I realized from the very beginning that I was going to be a character actor. I was going to play different characters in somebody else's world. And I accepted that. And it's proven to be a pretty good approach, you know, to accept. It was, you know, people ask me the secret to my success. I say low expectations.
That's right. That's right. I love that.
You know, I just took it. I mean, Moises, you know this. Shirley, you know this. Armando knows this. You take it one day at a time. You got an audition. You gotta make it happen, or you don't. If it doesn't happen, you move on to the next day. Café con leche in the morning, and you're at it again. So it's like, and I think that's what's really the philosophy. And I think it circles back to Seneca. Didn't Seneca have this wonderful quote about beginnings, Jason?
Yes. Every end is a new beginning.
Yes.
Right.
So that's exactly so the end of that phase in our Armando's character's life, you know, is the true beginning of a life, you know, a full life well lived.
Right.
And you accept the gifts that you are given and the opportunities that you're offered, and you make the best of them, and you try to live a productive, happy life.
Yeah, and learning to embrace that, you know, building off what Tony's saying, learning to embrace that success is becoming your mentor. I mean, that's, you know, I mean, when I finally felt like I really wrapped my brain around the arc of the movie and the edit, it was when it dawned on me that he needed to become Ruben. You know, I mean, and maybe that's obvious in the end to people, but it's not that obvious when you're like staring at the screen going like, wait, what needs to happen in this scene? And
you know, I'll tell you one more thing, and that was what Ruben's all about. People don't find happiness when they're just about satisfying their own needs.
Right.
When you start to basically, you know, make your life about others, whether it starts with a family, your community, your country, that's where you're going to find fulfillment and purpose. Because the road of narcissism, as we have seen, you know, in the current,
I think this is a safe space, Tony. It's okay.
Yes, it leads to chaos, and I don't know, probably violence.
A little bit, yeah.
That's right.
Great. How are we doing on time, Andres? And Evie?
8:09. I mean, if you guys want to keep going, we can. But
I'm cool. Whatever you guys want to do.
Yeah.
Let's get a little inside baseball here. Here's a question about. I noticed a different contrast between the two shots of when David shows a picture of Anita for the first time to Mark versus Ruben. In other words, when he shows the picture to Mark, the casting director, who didn't seem very eager to see him, and shows the picture to Ruben. I was wondering if there was something specific you guys had previously talked about before shooting those that you wanted to get across those two different interactions?
I mean, anything like that's in the movie is designed to be different the second time or third time you see it. I mean, I think Ray's character is a really good example of that. The egg sandwich guy is not really about egg sandwiches, right? It's never about the cupcake. He's the metaphor for Puerto Rico, and not engaging versus finally engaging, and that's, you know, when he's very close to. Sorry, this is spoilery, but I'm sure people will have some idea where the movie's going. So that moment with the picture, that's a really Devin. I see you. That's a really I know who that is. That's a really good catch, and trying to find, you know, a difference in when we had any sort of recurring, for lack of a better word, motif. It was, or action or event. It was designed with that in mind to be executed and perceived differently.
I want you all, young actors and, you know, even older actors who are watching this, is that there's a degree of intentionality, and there's nothing in the end in a film is accidentally put on stage, unless it's a coffee cup in Game of Thrones. It is sloppiness if it's a coffee cup. It is intentional.
I don't get the Game of Thrones thing, because they've got $12 billion and like they have 50 script supervisors and nobody notices a coffee cup. Like, come on, that's crazy. Yeah, it's okay.
Hey, look, in Rain Man,
Right.
in that coffee shop scene between Dustin and Tom, the salt and pepper shakers keep moving around the table. I mean, what is that, a $50-60 million film at the time?
Right. That's right. That's right. That's right. It happens.
And nobody forgot to replace the salt and pepper shaker where they were supposed to be.
I see. I see an awesome scriptie who's in the audience, who I worked with on my last feature, and she's like, I would have noticed that coffee cup. Yes, Pam Rook. I know you would have. I know Pam's amazing. That's great. That's hilarious.
Okay. There we go. There was a thank you. That's all the questions I have here. Yes, Andres.
I do have a question, really quickly. I guess it's more for the writers.
Ask the people you don't have daily access to.
Well, no, this is something that I've always thought about, especially, watching the movie a couple of times. And there's two very distinct cultures that you try to portray in the movie. And I was wondering, what was the midpoint, or like, how did you guys dealt with like each other's involvement? Like, I feel that I would be terrified if like I have to go and shoot something in like France, and I'm not really like, I want to be able to portray the that culture and whatever it is, and it was so beautifully done. And when you guys went to PR, it was so like down to earth and real. And I was wondering, what was the work relationship between director and writers and even the actors to be able to kind of like manage that way?
First of all, I think finding the name for the company that included both of their cultures. And what is that, Jason?
Yes, our production company name is Kosher Canepa, which is we're very that was Armando's idea. We were very, very happy about that. Very happy. I mean, again, I think it goes back to trying to tell a universal story in a very specific way. So the story is very specific, and it's, I hope it's authentically Latino and Puerto Rican and Latinx in its experience, you know what I mean? And how people experience it as it should be, you know what I mean? So I have to take a back seat to any decisions and defer to Armando on any of that kind of stuff. And at the same time, to be complete, I mean, talking about like not being afraid of being vulnerable, right? The scene with Father Ruben and Armando, like that is half his experience and half my experience in dealing with my father. You know what I mean? And imagining that and watching that happen, and that was a big part of what's in the movie. So we're really hive-mindy about deferring to each other, and there just isn't. I don't know. I've never had that with Armando where there's like ego involved. I'm not saying it, and I'm hoping that maybe it's something I've left in my past, from previous collaborations, who knows? But I've just never felt that with him where I'm like, yeah, this is your area. And then this is our area. And then like, he's like, you are going to deal with everything with Kitty City. And I'm like, okay, it's, it's because I'm like, I'm not the expert. She's over there. But I'm the expert in that area. Right. So I think it's just about learning how to collaborate and trusting the hive mind. I don't know how it is for you guys, but that's my feeling.
All right.
Ooh, crickets. Well, that was awkward.
It was profound. People are thinking about it.
We were left thinking.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you guys for coming. This has been amazing. It's such an honor for us to have you. I do have one last question, one more for the actors in the room. I know that the world feels stopped. I know that all that we hear seems to be that it's over and that it's not coming back, or it's coming back completely changed. And I wanted to know if there's one thing that you're hoping and that you're looking forward to of once we get back to work after this break that will be hopefully different.
I for myself, I just know that there are going to be a whole lot of stories, a whole lot of new stories, a fountain of stories, if anything, coming out of this, which I'm really looking forward to. But I also have to say, what's great about being in this kind of world is that the things that you value really, having a bilingual moment, brillan, they shine. So for me, just this moment here, spending this moment with all of you and talking about the craft and the hive, and coming and working collectively has been a wonderful opportunity for someone where it's kind of quiet right now. This is, for me, has been really special to share this with all of you as a reminder of why I do what I do. which is telling stories and wonderful stories at that. So I look forward to this space, but also the stories post whenever that'll be, the plethora of stories that'll be coming out. Like that, Tony?
You're treading on my territory now. You're on private property now.
That's a catchphrase. You gotta leave that.
That's funny. No, I love it. I love that you use it. For me, a couple things. One, I'll start with the fact that I think communication has gotten, for better or for worse, has become more democratized. And the fact that we've had to communicate through this medium in this way has made us more comfortable with doing so. I think that's a positive. I feel that, I'm hoping that in the future we will text less and actually communicate socially, visually more with each other and have these kinds of conversations. And so I think that it's I heard someone make a distinction between physically distancing. That's what we need to do to stay safe and healthy. But we can't afford to socially distance, right? Because we need each other more than ever. Because isolation, aloneness is really part of the pandemic, and so a lot of us are suffering from that, from the effects of that. And the second thing was that I feel that this is a time when I think we need artists and art more than ever. Art elicits empathy, creates empathy. It's wonderful that we've been talking about this movie because the movie has made us feel different things about different people and, in different ways. We need empathy right now, because if we just butt heads and if we approach the chaos, with violence or aggression, we're not going to go anywhere. It's just going to get worse. So the artists have to take the responsibility to be informed, get involved, and create art that, in a sense, engenders empathy for each other, that allows us to walk in each other's shoes. Because I tell you, there's dark times ahead, and I think it's important for artists like Jason and others to create these kind of stories that bring us together and make us feel our common humanity instead of our ideological differences.
Yeah, and I just building off the empathy thing, I'm sorry, but I think that's the reason this movie got made, was me seeing what Armando was dealing with and going through, and the hurricane, and me wanting to be a part of it and helping Armando push that up the hill. But it all comes from empathy. It just came from me, or like trying to tell a Puerto Rican story when you're not Puerto Rican. It's like, you don't want to culturally appropriate. I was really aware of that, right? But at the same time, the universality in the story I think is there. And for me, it's empathy. It's just going like, the way out of all of this is just, oh, you're struggling. You know what I mean? Like, we owe you something. I owe you something. It's okay. Honestly, as a descendant of relatively recent generationally immigrants, like, how anybody who comes from an immigrant tradition cannot empathize with what groups are going through is just, it brings me to tears. It's mind-boggling to me. And I think everybody needs to do that.
Amen.
Yeah, I think for me, prior to COVID, you're on this hustle, this audition, this commercial, whatever it is, on the train, saying you're on this run. And I think what COVID really taught me is just to really stand still and just like be at peace. And for me, I've been reading so much, like just different books, watching so many different films, and that's just inspiring me it's inspiring to like really want to make your own things. like, regardless of what it is, a short, a feature, because our stories are our stories are so important for a long time. You know, they wanted to tell our stories, but nobody wanted us to be in the story. So I think when Jason Armando wrote this, it was just like, holy shit, this is a story made by us, told by us, that's universal, that everybody else can relate to. So I think just really being at peace, listening, and just making your own stuff is what this whole thing has just really taught me.
Yeah, I'm just going to wrap it up by saying Hamlet said, of course, that
Wait,
theater
you're
was a
quoting Hamlet,
mirror.
right? I didn't see that
Theater
coming.
was a mirror. But we also, as I found out, and as I feel deeply about the work that Armando and Jason did, it's also a window. It's a mirror on world, and it's a window into something. And that's what we have to always remember. And I thank all of you for some unbelievably wonderful, collaborative, collective enterprise for catharsis. You just proved it all the way.
Thanks, Ray.
Back to you, Andres.
Thank you, Ray, and thank you everyone for joining us. This really
For sure, man.
I wanted to remind everyone, the attendees here too, that although this was a free event, we are definitely encouraging donations to the make sure I get this right, the
Father
Frank Golden SJ for the Colegio San Ignacio de Loyola in Puerto Rico. It's a scholarship started by Armando for his mentor, and it's just helps students from under-resourced communities in Puerto Rico attend this college, which is the premier college in PR, tuition free. So if you haven't done so already, please go ahead. In our emails, you find the link, but make sure and reach out to us if you want the link to donate, as this is an amazing cause as well. Thank you so much, guys.
Sure.
Thank you again. Make sure you follow us on social media. Make sure you follow Seneca Movie in AMCP New York. Go on IMDb and leave them a cool message. And yeah, and we hope.
Oh yeah, I mean the IMDb thing. I know people think it's not a big deal, but go on IMDb and I mean, if you liked it, go on IMDb and rate the movie, because that actually does mean something. I know it seems strange, but it does mean something. And at the same time, there are some really weird IMDb trolls that like to go around and give all movies 1 star. It's a very weird thing on IMDb. So I know we don't have we're doing okay, but we can use it. It does help with international distribution and those kinds of things, and bringing up visibility for the film. So it seems small, but it actually does help.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Evie. Thank you.
No, absolutely. And thank you again. It was an honor to have all of you, and thank you, attendees. And stay in touch with AMCP. As I told you in the beginning, and I told you in the beginning, we're an acting school. We have classes every month. We actually have some upcoming classes with members of this panel. Ray's giving a class. Jay will be giving a class. So stay tuned, and we'll be back more.
Yeah, thank you, Jason, Moises, Shirley, Tony.
Are we going to take did you want to take a picture with anybody who's willing to turn their camera on?
Oh yes. Let's do it.
I mean, I would like to see some of the attendees if they're willing.
We're gonna
those that are willing.
Do it. You can not accept it if you don't want it on.
Yeah. So what we're gonna do is promote the attendees that are here to panelists so that they can open their camera. And if you're comfortable with it, please, if you're not, then don't.
Doing it now. It's gonna take a couple of seconds, but it should slowly start happening.
Oh, very cool.
What's up?
Hi.
Camila.
Alex.
Hi. Oh my God. Hi, everybody.
Hey, there's more. They're coming.
Look at that. Well, that's
Wow.
I know it's always these webinars are great, but then I never get to see anybody. It's right.
No, it's so lonely. There we go.
So cool.
Only a couple more.
Oh, look, there's Hannah Williams, another great script supervisor. There's two great script supervisors here tonight.
Okay, I think that's all of us.
Right.
Oh, wonderful.
Hi.
Awesome.
Should we look at the picture?
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This is awesome.
Thank you.
All right, so we're gonna take a picture real quick.
Oh wow! Do it again. There you go.
Yeah.
There we did it.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to see everybody. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Bye, Shirley.
Bye.
Peace,
Bye,
guys.
Jason.
Bye, Tony. Thank you. Love you all.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Ray.